What's up, world? I'm Matt Newberg from Hungry, and this is The Feed. Each episode, we'll dive into conversations with the industry insiders who are leveraging technology to shape the way we eat. On today's episode of The Feed, I sat down with Arik Keller, founder and CEO of Mable, a next-generation wholesale technology platform for emerging food and beverage brands. In this episode, we'll chat about Mable's three-sided marketplace of retailers, CPGs, and distributors, how it's enabling C-stores to test new brands, and how technology can play a role in creating a more diverse and flexible ecosystem. Arik, it's awesome to have you here. Thanks so much for taking the time. I would love to just start off talking about your background in product management in the tech world, which I think you and I both have that in common. I don't know if you saw that, but
didn't.
And then kind of how you started Mable and kind of found that problem that you're now looking to solve.
Yeah, sure. I think I got channeled into a product role as product was, emerging as a maybe a newer job category. I'm dating myself, but when I joined, PayPal acquired a business I was at, and I was head of product for demand generation for small businesses, and then went to PayPal. And I'd say that was my first, real disciplined product role. Spent 4 years there while PayPal was going through very much a transition into a product-led business, from an engineering-led business as it was started, in 2000. So spent 4 years there, and then really had product roles after that. Started a company in the identity space, sold that to Facebook in 2017, and that's where my story kind of takes a fun twist. Took a little bit of a break from a technology job and bought myself a rundown grocery store up in Vermont. Wow. It was kind of one of these places that, you drive by with your friends. It's a rundown 20-year-old store. And it's one of those places, you look at and say, someone should fix that up. It, could be amazing, and how hard can it be, sort of thing. And so I bought this store. It'd been around for 20 years, 3 lanes of grocery and food service. So, and within 6 months, learned how hard it was to discover and buy new emerging local brands. I went to my first trade show, the New York Fancy Food Show. Walked around to all these, wonderful booths and tried all these new things, mushroom jerky and local granola and this new power bar and keto, paleo, all these things. And I came back with 80 pamphlets in my bag, and I called our mainline distributor. And they, of course, said, we don't carry that brand, but maybe here's another brand, or, hey, we'll look into carrying that brand. And, the reality is it's really hard for distributors to take on local emerging brands. And so that's when it hit me that there's got to be an easier way to help independent stores and now many other types of businesses easily discover and buy from brands directly.
Amazing. I love that you bought that grocery store. Do you still own it?
I do. It's called Paradise Provisions. It's up in Warren, Vermont, at the base of Sugarbush Mountain. It's a great little store. It is definitely not as easy as I thought it would be. And unfortunately, I don't spend a ton of time there, but it's a very fun business to be involved in.
So I'm assuming you're dog fooding a lot of your own products and beta testing a lot of the Mable infrastructure using this store?
Yes, they have been a great guinea pig in everything we build. Can you try this? Give us feedback on that. Showing us how, stores buy from, my store is a small store. Maybe we have 1,200 products in the store, but we buy from, 6 or 7 distributors. We have a mainline distributor, a well-known distributor, and then regional distributors. We have other distributors for the food service side of the business. So it's a very archaic and time-consuming process just to replenish the inventory we have, let alone discover the next best items that we should be carrying based on, what consumers are asking for. And so Mable is that sort of discovery engine that sits at the front of that, experience and gets stores to, try and buy new things.
Awesome. Yeah. Can't wait to dive in. Before we do that, I would love to just take a step back and maybe have you give us like a sense of just like how you would segment this entire wholesale market. How big is it from a sales perspective? And then,
Yeah.
talk about how consolidated it is, like how many players there are that control how much percentage of the entire space.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the grocery space is 680 billion. The wholesale piece of that is 250 to 300 billion. You're seeing a lot of convergence between grocery and food service, grab and go. And so, food service and restaurant is 900 billion. And so, we've mostly stayed in the grocery lane because we want to go deep in that space. It's complicated, it's complex, it's archaic. But we tend to, where we're seeing sort of other segments, come to our platform and use our platform in the food service space as well. The thing that we knew going into this, and we're just now, after spending 4 years building a B2B wholesale platform from the ground up, we're just now reacting to is that distributors play a critical role in this business, right? We never had the illusion that we were going to disintermediate distributors and that we were going to do any type of meaningful distribution ourselves. We want to be the tech layer that first helps stores discover new items and then move into sort of, more smarter, more efficient replenishment of those items. And so, the big distributors control a lot of the market, absolutely. And we'll get into it as we go here, but we're now partnering with some of those distributors and extending our platform, to their business for them to essentially launch their own marketplaces.
You said something kind of at the beginning, which was, or just now, but like about how hard it is for distributors to carry local CPG brands, but
yeah,
how difficult, I mean, looking at it from the other perspective of how difficult it is for a CPG brand to get into one of these distributors, like, can you talk about some of those pain points and why that might be broken from both of those sides?
Yeah. That's a great question. That's really exactly where we're focusing right now. Internally in our team, we call it sort of Mable as a great pre-distribution platform. Distributors, they're massive logistics businesses. In many cases, they're kind of busting at the seams in their current distribution centers and working as hard as they can to replenish, things that are selling in stores across the country. Brands are emerging every day, thousands of them every year with great new products. And they see Mable and other channels like us as a new, easy distribution channel that doesn't require the upfront investment that a distributor might require for slotting fees and things like that, and faster to market. We have a couple thousand stores buying on our platform, and so we can easily onboard a brand within a couple of days, make sure they're qualified to sell on our marketplace, and have them selling within a week. Distributors, again, like, because they are logistics businesses and again, really hard businesses to run, they want to keep up with trends, but it's hard. They have one of their big grocery chains asking them to onboard these brands. They're getting hit from all directions on brands to bring in. And in many cases, they can't take on those brands. Or they do and they take them on too early and they don't sell, or they, and these are small brands. It's a paying big slotting fees and things like that just doesn't make sense. And so Mable as a marketplace today is a great sort of transition to going from 10 stores to 100 to 300 and getting those brands ready for mainline distribution. And that's when kind of the light bulb hit us in the last year and a half, which is, we started moving up market into larger chains, mainly C-stores. And we have C-store chains that are now, instead of selling to independent stores like mine in Vermont, we have C-store chains that are 30, 50, 80 locations, 100 locations, starting to buy 10, 20, 30 brands. That means lots of brands are showing up in direct dropship model to all these locations. And so ultimately our goal is to help brands graduate into mainline distribution where distributors are buying pallets and breaking them up and delivering them to a bunch of stores. But we see a real opportunity for a tech platform to enable that because it's quite a broken process today.
So you mentioned slotting fees for the CPGs. When I think about slotting fees, I typically think about like CPGs that are paying grocers for shelf space. But can you talk a little bit more about like some of those requirements and some of those agreements between those broadline distributors and emerging CPG brands and why that might be just financially like not feasible for some of these companies?
Yeah, I mean, typically if you're going to go into a mainline distributor, call it one of the top 10, there's going to be a charge to get into each distribution center. So let's say a mainline distributor has 20 DCs. Maybe you're going to get into 5 and then along the Northeast or East Coast. There's going to be a pretty lengthy, arduous contract that you're going to look at. You're going to have certain insurance requirements. You're going to have certain SLAs for delivery, and you're going to have to buy back inventory if it doesn't sell. You're going to have to put your inventory on sale, 3 or 4 times a year for the distributor to buy it in some cases. You're going to have to pay a fee to get into those 5 distribution centers. And so it's a big commitment. And a lot of times it works, but a lot of times it doesn't, and the brand, isn't prepared. And there's a lot of other companies preparing brands to do that. Consulting businesses like Rodeo CPG is a great business, and others. We're not that business. We're the tech layer that's going to, I think, enable those brands to gain distribution direct. And then because we have relationships with some of the top distribution businesses in the U.S., will be an easy path for those brands to transition into distribution in a more cost-effective way. There's a little bit more data behind it and, certainty that brand's going to sell before they move into those 5 distribution centers on the East Coast.
Got it. Very interesting. Okay, so now I really want to dig into the 3 sides of this marketplace. I think let's start with like the pitch that you are giving to retailers. So maybe can you talk a little bit more about the types of brands that you're working with that set you apart from other distributors, like how many brands are there, and then kind of the logistics and integration side of how these retailers can order from you.
Yeah. So we have about 3,000 brands on the platform today. I'd say 80% of those we'd consider small, emerging, local brands. And the other 20% range from medium to large. So we could have a small $500,000, 3 SKU, paleo bar manufacturer, and all the way up to Siete Foods is on our platform. Larger brands are not a big focus for us, but Siete is obviously a wildly successful brand. And look to us to take care of a lot of the small independent stores that they can't easily service through their distribution partners. The brands range from mostly dry packaged snacks, things like that, but we have frozen fish, we have gourmet cheese, if we have ice cream. If you can efficiently drop ship cases of your products, and then you prove that you can through our sort of onboarding and vetting process, then you're a qualified brand. While we went to market with sort of leaning toward better for you brands, ultimately our goal is to make discovery and procurement easier. And so we will be expanding those categories. From the retailer perspective, it's changing a little bit. Again, like the first 3.5 years of our business, build our own marketplace, prove that we can get stores like mine, discovering and buying directly from brands. They still get 90% of their shelf from a mainline distributor, but they're discovering and testing and learning with new brands in their store. And they like to do that, right? They're trying to keep ahead of the competition and be different than the store down the street. Our business, again, is evolving into enabling essentially a marketplace, a distribution marketplace for mainline distributors. And we're going to launch, we have a couple of small ones right now. We're going to launch a very large one at NACS, which we can't talk about just yet. But, think about a distributor who has, tens of thousands of customers and wants to add third-party selling to their offering, right? Think about Amazon, right? 60% of their business is third-party sellers. So you have all these distributors who have a tremendous amount of demand, lots of stores already buying from them. They also want to discover and buy new products. So we're taking our entire platform and transforming it into also being able to serve as a marketplace for our distributor partners. And so the retailer value is similar. My little store gets to discover and buy, cool new things. Well, now a C-store chain or a grocery chain can work with their mainline distributor, visit the Mable-powered marketplace of that distributor, discover that local granola, try it for 3 months in 5 locations, prove that it sells, and then we'll help that brand graduate into these distribution partners we have. So it's a bit of quite a transformation for us that we've been working on for the last year that takes the value prop we had for smaller retailers and brings up market to larger retailers.
Interesting. There's a lot to unpack there, and it's a very interesting network you're building out. So very, very cool. Let's before we get into I have a lot of questions about the distributors, but
yes, I can imagine.
Before we do that, let's hear the brand pitch. So what are you going to new brands and telling them about your marketplace? How many retailers are you working with? Like, what's your sweet spot as far? You've kind of hinted that it's a lot of upmarket convenience, but what does that actually look like? And then what are the payment terms for how these distributors or retailers are going to pay?
Yeah. So for that first phase of the business, that first 3.5 years as we're sort of building this, the brand pitch was certainly easy access to a new channel without having to invest a lot of money. And since we had retailers signing up all over the country, that allowed these brands to quickly acquire, new customers and begin shipping their product directly. That's now evolving into, as we build out these marketplaces for our partners, large distributors, and you can go to, I won't name any names, but a large distributor's marketplace, then, that now gives this brand not only access to the couple thousand small stores on our platform, but to the larger chains that are distributor customers. Now, we started, as you said, creeping up market, ourselves, up market meaning to larger chains. You may have seen some press. Alltown Fresh is this amazing chain of, maybe they're up to 18 stores now, most on the East Coast, owned by global partners. And this is like convenience store of the future. This is just beautifully curated snacks and products that you normally would not find at a gas station. And so, these are things that our brands are getting really excited about, right? Just access to demand. The hardest thing for these brands, they're really good at building their bars or their elixirs or their, whatever their product is, but gaining access to demand is really hard. And that's where we come in.
And then let's talk about how this all works with the distributors. So you're building a website where they essentially can see this marketplace seems like it's accessible to both retailers and distributors, right? Or
yes, that's a great way to think about it. Yep.
So you could either have a retail just log on to Mable and see all these brands and order from you, and essentially bypass the distributor, or they can go through their distributor onto a white label site where there's some sort of agreement, I guess. So
you got it.
So it's what's the problem that you're solving for these distributors, and what's the flywheel that this has on the larger marketplace?
Yeah, great question. So, think about it back to distributors and capacity. They have a high bar for bringing in new brands, right? They want to bring in brands that they can deliver to hundreds or thousands of locations. So if I'm a big distributor, and let's say, I don't know, Albertsons is my customer, one of my big customers. Albertsons asked me to bring something in, I'm probably going to do it. But if I have a bunch of, medium 100 chain stores, 50 chain stores, and they're asking me as a distributor to bring in brands, it's hard to do that. I can't just bring in every brand. And so, we're with this platform, these distributors can basically say yes to all of their customers who want to try new products. We can onboard that brand, set it up for direct drop ship, and allow that store to start to test and learn with that direct drop ship model. And the benefit to the distributor is I get to sell inventory that I don't need to bring into my warehouse. I already have the demand. I've been in business for 50 years, 100 years. These stores buy from me every day, every week. Trucks go there every day. So they trust me as a distributor. So this marketplace is really an extension of their warehouse. And we get to curate the brands. They get to choose which brands are in that marketplace that are non-competitive with the brands they carry, or maybe in categories that they don't carry, that they want to add and consider, adding to their portfolio. So, and the last thing I'll say is distributors are logistics businesses, and I think they all recognize they need to be technology businesses. They need to be commerce business. They're massive commerce businesses, but arguably they're behind in technology. B2B in general is behind B2C, as everyone likes to say, right? Maybe a decade behind B2C. Grocery in general is a pretty slow-moving industry when it comes to tech adoption, and wholesalers are a bit behind the curve. Most of their websites and catalogs that you see online, you look like they were built 20 years ago. And so our marketplace is resonating well with those distributors who recognize that.
I still need to get over the hurdle of why you even really need them, because I understand that at some point they're going to onboard these brands into their into their warehouses and start selling them through their logistics, but right now with this white label website, all they're doing is curating essentially stuff that's getting drop shipped and sent out completely outside of their network. It's unclear whether they're even handling any of the invoicing or any of that between the retailer and the brand. So I'm just kind of curious, why I mean, it seems like from my perspective, it seems like you're looping them in so that they can build this longer term relationship, but it doesn't seem like they add a lot of value in the short term.
I think for brands to be really successful, I would argue even mildly successful, you have to grow that brand to, let's say, 10 million plus, right? With the margins in this industry, you have to grow to that business for 10 million a year plus. It's really hard to do that in a pure dropship model. Some brands have done it. Some D2C brands have done it. But ultimately, you need distributors buying pallets of your product for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stores. Brands love our platform and Faire and these other marketplaces, but in many cases, they don't want to ship a bunch of $120 orders. They want to ship pallets. Brands love selling pallets. Some that want to stay small and stay small forever might not. But in general, if you're going to grow to be a successful brand, you need mainline distribution. And believe me, we've heard an earful from our brands about mainline distributors, right? All the things you see on social media, LinkedIn, all the sort of pain points. And, distributors recognize that there's a gap they need to fill, which is how do I, as a distributor, work with these emerging brands so that I don't take them on too early. I take them on at the right time, or don't take them on at all if it doesn't make sense. And that's where we get into this flexible distribution model, which is there are some, to your point, there are some cases where direct drop ship works well, like the model we have today. And why are we working with distributors? But ultimately we recognize that as brands grow, they need mainline distribution.
Yeah. So it's all about investing in that future relationship and
You got
vetting
it.
them early on. Makes a lot of sense.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, so let's talk about the business model because this is pretty complex here. You have three different
Yeah.
parties. Maybe just walk us through like a typical order, and then like how every one of those players, like let's just say I'm a retailer that is ordering through this white label distributor website of these, and I'm picking out a dozen emerging brands to stock up on my end caps, like or
Yeah.
at the checkout stand, and walk us through how each of those parties, how that transaction kind of plays out across these three parties, and like what's the business model from all of them.
Sure. We started the business as most marketplaces do, taking a commission from the supply side of the business. So we take a commission from the brands. So we'll onboard a brand. We will promote that brand or those brands to a store. The store will log on, buy, $200, a couple cases of different flavors. The brand drop ships the product in a couple of days. It arrives at the store. We give the store friendly payment terms if they qualify, net 30, net 45, up to net 45. And then the retailer pays us, we have a whole payments platform, and then we remit a balance to the brand. So we take our commission as part of that transaction. So, think of us as a virtual distributor. Distributors take as low as 7 in some high volume cases and as high as 35%. And, we're somewhere, closer to the 7. As it's public on our website, we charge 12.5% commission to the brand side of the business. And that's the marketplace that we've built directly for the last, 4 years. As we evolve into taking this marketplace that we built and extending it to distributors in this white label fashion, we will share that commission with the distributor partner and also charge a SaaS fee to the distributor partner.
Got it.
Ultimately, we see us as a tech enabler and platform with, again, these distribution partners driving a lot of the demand. And, so that commission model could change over time.
And on like the invoicing front, do the brands get paid immediately? Are you doing any of the factoring on these payments, or do they also accept those same terms?
Brands typically get paid immediately, or they typically have reasonable terms, 10, 15, 20 in some cases.
Okay.
So there's cases where we're floating
right
that for that time frame.
Got it.
That's right.
Okay, so now I think it's starting to make sense.
Yeah.
So now I want to really dig into the technology side of this because, like you mentioned, you're solving a very it's, in my mind, it's a very sexy, unsexy problem. And we've had other people on this podcast talking about this for the restaurant space. And they say the same thing. The restaurant wholesale technology stack is it's probably just as bad as what we're describing here. I don't know which one is worse, but
right.
A lot of entrepreneurs are very seduced by problems that they experience directly when they're ordering food on a mobile app, or they're sitting down and planning out their online grocery shopping, and they're solving problems, but maybe they're not the gnarliest problems that we need to solve. And so it's fun to interview people like you who are willing to really get in the weeds and buy grocery stores and see
right.
how strange of an industry it is. But so I want to talk about what you think are the biggest levers you think that you have to transform the status quo of the wholesale supply chain, and like kind of what you're seeing from all these transactions that the distributors simply aren't capturing, or that just doesn't exist really in a database.
Yeah. So I think we like to remind ourselves as a startup that we're sort of still in the third inning here. And in the first few innings, we're building a B2B wholesale platform from the ground up, specifically designed for grocery, that enables easy discovery. And so that discovery is, the couple thousand brands that we have. And as we're now learning, the distributor partners that we're building commerce for view us as a very viable partner to perhaps help them with the rest of their ordering. And so we've built this digital catalog, that we could easily extend our platform to help, distributors do more and more of their ordering. In general, I think what we've learned as we get further into the ordering or procurement world, sort of, I guess, inning 3 through 6, we're seeing that that's a very inefficient piece of the model as well, right? Like, I think, take my little store. We use Square. It's a great POS. We can set some inventory thresholds. We can issue POs, but it's still a pretty sort of basic, procurement process. And we have to keep track of inventory, and most small stores are really bad at that. Well, I think we're learning that even medium to large stores have a pretty inefficient replenishment process as well. It's data driven, but it's like, data driven from the last 6 weeks of data. It's still, a store manager kind of walking through aisles with a scanner and looking at last week's sales reports. It's not taking into consideration, external data factors. And so there's other companies trying to solve this, and I think it's still early. And I think we're seeing an opportunity to, insert ourselves into that, deeper to the procurement process. Now that we're a more mature business. There's obviously a tremendous amount of data that is bought and sold in the grocery space, right? There's pure data providers, Spins, Nielsen, all these guys. Distributors sometimes sell their own data to brands. Brands are craving data from all these different platforms. And so we certainly see an opportunity, in addition to the procurement, smarter, intelligent procurement, is to monetize the data that we're going to be seeing through the platform. That's a lot. We're not saying that this is going to be what we're, going to tackle all that together, in the next 3 innings. But, these are the areas that are piquing our interest and we're seeing as some of the bigger pain points and opportunities to monetize in this space in the near term.
And then, I guess briefly, if you could just touch on how these retailers are ordering from you, the different channels. So I saw that you have an app, you have obviously a website, and you have some EDI integrations. But you could talk about your integrations and how you're kind of inserting yourself into the existing stack would be helpful.
It's a great question. Yeah. So small stores like mine go onto the marketplace, place their orders. They can place orders for as many brands as they like, enter their credit card. In some cases, we have them on terms, so we'll send them an invoice if they've qualified. And so we call that, direct marketplace ordering. As we moved up market into these chains, we quickly realized that we had to do, full EDI integrations. And so, these stores have, again, 80 locations. They don't want their store managers having to log into a website and, buy the inventory. They want them buying that inventory in the same way they buy from their mainline distributor. And so, we've integrated with platforms like PDI, which is, such an ERP for 60% of the C-store space. And so now we're able to light up any PDI-enabled C-store in a matter of days, so that we publish our products into PDI. The store selects which ones they're going to buy for all their locations, and the store manager can go through the aisle and scan what they want, and they get maybe their order from Core-Mark or McLean or some of their other big distributors, and then they click and order their Mable products as well. And that was really key, right? If we're just another platform, then that hurts retention. It's a training issue for the stores. And, we quickly realized, we kind of joked about EDI in the first 3 years because we're super, hip tech company. But EDI is sort of, a very important piece of how grocery procurement happens today. And then as we evolve into these sort of what we call integrated marketplaces with distributor partners, there'll be further integrations into their systems to enable their customers to more seamlessly order inventory that gets drop shipped. And so as part of enabling that third-party network, we know there's a lot of integration work that needs to come alongside of that to make it seamless for the customer.
Interesting. So you could see like a future where there's like a set it and forget it kind of auto replenishment for a lot of this based on kind of these integrations and the data that you have.
Yep, you got it. And I think that the grocery stores and the more progressive chains at the top of the market that are sort of progressive in tech as well are doing a lot of that. But I argue the core of the grocery and C-store space, certainly the restaurant space, is behind on that. I've seen how large billion-dollar C-stores decide how to reorder, and it might be 6 weeks of the past order. So you run your what should I order this week in the first week of February, and Christmas ornaments come up, right? Because Christmas was 5 weeks ago, and you ran out of those. You should probably order more. Right. So these are pretty basic approaches to how replenishment really should work. It should be AI powered, super intelligent, should use weather data, holiday data, seasonality, all these things that it really doesn't.
Right.
And so
looking at like last year's sales at the same, like looking at comps from last year, like as opposed to a trailing.
Exactly. 100%.
Got it.
100%. And we're not tackling that yet, but it's an area we're super, we see a lot of frustration with customers, and we want to tackle in the future.
Yeah, it seems like a total no-brainer.
Yeah.
I think it's a nice segue to talking a little bit more about the kind of the C-store retailers you're currently partnering with. If you could just shine a little bit more light on that, that'd be great. And some of the hotels, and like from looking at your website, the impression I get is that it's like when you're walking into the lobby of the hotel and they're trying to like rip your eyeballs out on bottled water and the beef jerky because it's convenient, right, to do so. It's the little mini stores within a larger property. I saw a lot of also glamping kind of customers on your site, which a lot of them I've not tried yet, but I would love to do Under Campus and Auto Camp. But
Same.
If you could talk a little bit more about that, I'd be fascinated to hear. Yeah.
We definitely have a lot of diverse segment of brands that come to our site. We're not really going after, a CrossFit gym or a hotel or an Under Canvas in a lot of our outbound marketing today, but they discover us either through a brand or through referral, and it's really easy to log on and discover some products and buy. And so we've been fortunate enough to build a network of, different segments. In general, our focus is to stay in that grocery lane. The C-store space sort of became interesting when we went to NACS, the big convenience show a year ago, and we started hearing just some really compelling statistics. So it's 150,000 convenience stores in the U.S. These are small footprint stores, many of which are attached to gas stations. Gas sales are going down, tobacco sales are going down, like all the things you kind of go to a convenience store to do. And all these stores are really trying to attract a new customer like you and I, or a customer who, wants to go into a store and buy something better for you. And so, that has been an area of focus for us. And so we went out and just to prove our platform, we went out and sold direct to these stores, right? And you can see the press, Alltown Fresh and Yako and Noria and a bunch of great stores who are really thoughtful about how they, want to diversify their products. Ultimately, we don't want to be a sales company. We want to be the platform. And so that's when we were able to prove that there's demand in this space, we can do EDI integrations to make this model work. It enables these C-stores to test and learn fast. Let's go find demand partners. And so let's go partner with the distributors who, we're essentially not stealing a lot of their business, but they're coming to us and they're ordering and we're proving this model works. Let's go take this model we just built and plug it into a distribution model, because that's where all the demand is. And so, we'll stay in this grocery and C-store lane, but Food service, again, is really interested in hospitality. There's a lot of, to your point, C-stores and hotels and hospitals and college campuses. I went to visit my daughter she's at IU, and I walked into the C-store, and it's like Chef Boyardee and Campbell's Chunky Soup. And she's like, Dad, no one goes to the store, And so a lot of these college campuses are reinventing their stores as well. And so we're seeing demand in a lot of these areas.
Yeah, the stat that sticks out in my mind is that like 90% of Americans live within like a 10-minute drive of a C-store, right? And as somebody who thinks a lot about convenience and food delivery, and who had chased the ultra fast trend of 2020, 2021 very closely, I started looking at the existing footprint of some of these big C-store retailers as potential last mile hubs for these kind of next gen products. It just simply hasn't happened, but it's exciting to hear that you're looking at leveraging those assets to be a little bit smarter about the types of the demographics that are within their radius that are looking for, better for you or just better products, not necessarily healthy as you said, but just like next gen products. And it just seems like there's a mismatch between smokes and cokes that they're currently selling and what the market around them is saying. And then obviously the electric vehicle thing is a whole other mess, but that's obviously going to take some time. And I have my own thoughts about that's really going to be at home. In my opinion, it's going to look more like rest stops on highways when you need to supercharge something, as opposed to your day-to-day city driving.
Right. Yeah, no doubt it's going to take a long time. Like this, consumer demand is consumer demand. And is it shifting? Yes. In, some sort of, demographics, it's shifting faster. But the smokes and cokes, to your point, like there's still a lot of that in the C-store space. And I think C-stores are recognizing that. They've been saying this for a decade, which is like, we need to diversify and bring in this new consumer. We're new to this space, but it seems like there's a meaningful shift happening.
Yeah. And when you look at some of the brands that you are carrying, like, how do you go about vetting them from all these different vectors that, whether it's nutrition, sustainability? I also noticed like a lot of diverse, like, minority owned brands as well. So like how do you go about maintaining that balance there?
So in the first 3 years we were pretty aggressive about brand acquisition, going after and building supply, and we have a pretty thorough vetting process. We're typically white glove onboarding the brand, talking to them. We do a lot of this stuff with tech, but we do want to connect with our brands quickly to make sure they're a real business and they have traction and they're able to meet certain SLAs. And those that don't, we're sort of scoring in the background and trying to coach via, sending them emails and telling them your delivery is not working. You need to improve in your service. So we have a process to make sure we have trusted brands. We leaned toward, as we talked about, better for you, local, diverse. These were brands that typically we were coming across at the trade shows we went to, and a lot of really interesting brand values that stores were paying attention to. And I think, as we grow and as we build these marketplaces for partners, there's even an elevated vetting process, right? So, the partner we're going to launch at Next is a very large C-store distributor. And so, an amazing business that has high SLAs and a high level of service with their customers. And so some of our brands aren't cut out for, selling into a 50, 100, 200 store C-store chain. And some of them don't want to be quite honest. It's not the market they're going after. And so we're having to, take, a bit of a different approach with each of these partners that we're signing to ensure that the supply is a great match for the demand.
Got it. Are there any brands that maybe aren't, the PepsiCos of the world, but that maybe some of our brand aficionados listening to this podcast might be aware of? If you could just share some of those. I know you said Siete Foods, but I'd love to hear more.
Siete Foods is a big one. I mean, Righteous Felon is a big favorite of ours. Beef jerky, mainly. They're a great company. Ryan Snacks. Up Top is a new freeze-dried candy that's on fire right now. Can't keep up with orders. Annie's Ginger Elixir is this small company in Brooklyn, New York. That is this, sort of healthy elixir. Just the fun part is this really great, sort of bottom of the cone. Ice cream. Favorite part of the ice cream is like the last bite, right? The last bite of the cone where there's a lot of ice cream at the bottom, and so they've made a treat out of that. There's a bunch of favorites we have for sure. We can post maybe a link to this with some of our top sellers.
Cool. I'd love to kind of hear, as we come out towards the end of the convo, like what your longer term vision is. You obviously started with these smaller C stores. It seems you're moving up market. You're starting with emerging brands, but we all know that startups, need to, form a beachhead somewhere and then expand.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious to hear what you can share about the longer term vision for what you want to do.
Yeah, sure. Like I said earlier, we like to remind ourselves that B2B wholesale is a decade behind B2C. And I think that a combination of the pandemic and other factors, I think, has caused a bit of an acceleration with B2B companies adopting commerce. And as a marketplace platform that was first, our own independent marketplace, but now partnering with some pretty major wholesale businesses in the grocery, we see ourselves as a, very forward-thinking tech innovator in grocery. And so, we see our platform in the next couple of years advancing these marketplaces that enable third-party selling for our partners. But ultimately, we think we can help these partners procure in a smarter way, and ultimately their retailers procure in a smarter way. And so we do see these, I know we talked about these distributor partners quite a bit in this call. It's because they're going to be an important piece of our strategy going forward, because we see the opportunity and they recognize that our tech platform can easily sort of help them, one, create a third-party network, and two, advance their commerce, faster than building it themselves.
Got it. So like kind of the system of record for, the almost like the Instacart for the distributors to power all their different brands on behalf of their retailers. That's
the goal. Absolutely. And, there's so many pieces of that too. If you think about grocery commerce today, there are sales reps walking into stores, introducing brands and taking orders, on one end of the spectrum, right? And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's, some EDI replenishment happening, and that's intelligent and, but still a bit archaic. And so, we see us building this end-to-end solution that really not only helps the emerging brands get into this third-party network, but more holistic, commerce enablement for the distributors.
Amazing. That's a pretty massive opportunity, and I hope you get there soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
So looking at the broader kind of wholesale distribution market over the next 5 to 10 years, like what are your broader kind of predictions, outside of, you just shared Mabel's vision, but like what do you think are some of the kind of the secular trends that we're going to see impacting retailers, brands, and consumers, and what do you think this is going to unlock across those kind of three channels, those three stakeholders?
Yeah, I would have to say sort of diversity and supply and flexibility and distribution, right? Like if you think about it, if you go into a C-store and there's only Cheetos in there, you're going to buy the Cheetos if you're hungry. Like that's what's there. And that's because it's just really easy to replenish Cheetos every week, because that's what the distributor carries, and your EDI creates an order. And, so you could argue, like, while on the consumer side, there's demand and there's consumer demographics and tastes that are driving that demand, but you could argue the stores and distributors are a bit responsible for this lack of selection too. And that's not because they don't want to, it's because it's really hard, right? Like all the things we talked about. It's hard to bring in new brands. It's hard to only send the Vermont granola to your New England, 27 location C-store chain, but not, the Southeast. Like, it's not a very intelligent supply chain. And so, why we feel good about coming into work some of these days is like, we are enabling some of these better for you brands to get into the beginning of this distribution. And now with these partnerships, maybe more advanced distribution, so that there is better selection on the shelves. Because ultimately, like, that drives health, and it drives happier consumers, and it drives revenue. It just isn't being done now because it's really hard to do, because of these legacy systems and how rigid they are, and it's just how the grocery space works today. And so we certainly have aspirations of getting this to better supply to more and more consumers at the end of the day.
Amazing. Yeah, I can't wait to see a day where, an entire, like, all the end caps at these C-stores are not just PepsiCo chips and, big gulp, sodas, and that it evolves to something that the modern consumer, as you mentioned, like, just is looking for, that's just untapped. So
Yep. We're starting to see it, and we're as eager as you to see more of it.
Well, Arik, this has been awesome. I definitely learned a lot. I'm very excited for you guys. If we have a lot of different people tuning into this podcast, if we have brands, we have maybe some distributors, I don't know, and retailers, next gen retailers. If people want to get in touch, how can they get started with your platform? And if there's anybody who's a talented engineer that wants to come work for you, how do they get in touch as well?
Yeah, you can go to our website, submit. If you're a brand, you can apply instantly. If you're a retailer, you can sign up instantly. And if you submit anything through our website, it'll make its way to me if you ask for me. So always happy to chat with stores, brands, distributors directly anytime.
Okay, and the website is meetmable.com, right?
That's right.
Okay, awesome. Well, Arik, thanks so much for coming on, and best of luck to you and the Mable team.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. It's been great.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like what you hear, please hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. And if you're curious to get a firsthand look at the cutting edge of food and tech, check out hungry.tv. That's Hungry with no U, where you can join in on live conversations like these or sign up for the free weekly newsletter.